Izaghi and the Strings of the Wind, written by Wesley Nascimento. Read for you by Brian Campbell. This is the story of a boy with clouds in his heart and courage in his hands. A boy named Izaghi, who built a flying device not to escape the world, but to understand it. In a realm called Arukai, where music changes the weather, riddles are spoken from treetops, and shadows dance with dreams. Izaghi dares to float beyond the edge of the map. But even as he soars, an invisible string tugs at his chest. A gentle reminder that every journey begins and ends with home. This audiobook is a lyrical adventure about wonder, belonging, and the quiet magic of growing up. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Now let the wind guide you into Izaghi and the Strings of the Wind. Chapter 1, The First Liftoff. Chapter title, When the Ground Let Go. In a quiet meadow just outside the invisible edge of his world, a boy named Izaghi stood on tiptoes, arms spread, listening to the sky. He was only 7, but he had already imagined more places than most people dream of in a lifetime. Today he wore his newest invention, 2 oval pieces of soft foam tied to his hips with braided cords, a tiny engine strapped to his back buzzing like a sleepy bee, and a pull string on his wrist that made the foam clap open and shut, catching the wind. "Here we go," he whispered. With a single pull, clap, a powerful gust shot beneath his feet. Grass bent, pebbles rolled, the wind laughed, and Izaghi floated. Not flew, floated, hovering like a feather that knew where it wanted to go. The invisible string tied to his chest, the one no one could see or touch, pulsed gently. It stretched like warm taffy, still connected to his village far behind the hill. But it didn't stop him. Not yet. He waved goodbye to the only place he'd ever known. "Just for a little while," he said to the wind. And then he was gone. 3 magical towns in Arakai. Velura, a lakeside town where music controls the weather. Rain comes with violins, sun with flutes, and snow with humming choirs. Izaghi learns the melody of the storm here. Nombai, a tree-dwelling town built high in the air where children never age. They live in wooden nests and speak only in riddles. Izaghi must trade a memory to pass through. Kalmire, a desert village where shadows come alive at night. They act out dreams and fears in the sand. Izaghi learns here that sometimes shadows just want to be seen. Mysterious character, the Thread Keeper. Name, Maivari. Appearance, wears robes made of stitched clouds. Long white hair, skin like tree bark. Her eyes look like they hold time. Purpose. She cares for the invisible strings of every soul in Arukai. She can see where everyone has been and where they still must go. Izaghi's connection. She appears in dreams, guiding him when he's torn between staying and going. She tells him, "Strings do not chain us, Izaghi. They remember us." Izaghi's flying device, visual description. A small harness wraps around his chest and hips. 2 soft foam clappers hang at his sides, shaped like curved butterfly wings. When his wrist pulls the string, they swing out and then snap back in, generating powerful wind that lifts him gently. A tiny handmade engine hums at his back, with copper wires, gears, and a wind-spinning turbine that helps him steer. As he moves, a faint blue shimmer trails behind him like a ribbon. Chapter 2, The Village That Sang the Sky. Izaghi's first destination is a place that doesn't speak with words, but with weather and song. Izaghi floated for what felt like hours, following the curve of the hills until they began to ripple into valleys. Below him, clouds curled gently over a sparkling lake. The water shimmered like glass, and above it sat rooftops that looked like harp strings, golden and curved. As he descended, the wind around him began to hum. It wasn't the wind he knew. It was music. It rolled over the lake in warm waves. A violin whisper brought a soft drizzle. A flute trill made sunlight break through the clouds like laughter. Izaghi feet touched down on the cobblestone path of Valura. Children with bells tied to their ankles danced by without speaking. Elderly women plucked harps from balconies, and men waved with one hand while tapping drums with the other. No one used words, but somehow everyone understood each other. Izaghi smiled. His heart was already playing along. The house of sound. An old man approached him, his beard long enough to touch the ground, his back curved like a bass clef. He placed a tiny wooden instrument in Izaghi's hand, a flute no bigger than his finger. "Play what you feel," the man said, the only words Izaghi would hear in Valura. When Izaghi blew into the flute, unsure and clumsy, the sky above him twinkled. A few stars blinked into view, even though it was still day. Laughter burst from the rooftops. It wasn't mocking, it was joy. Even the sky joined in. "You're a traveler," a girl signed to him, using both hands like a river dance. "Your wind speaks loud, but here our hearts sing louder." Izaghi stayed in Valura for 3 days. He helped a boy rebuild a broken rain tower. He shared stories through song, drawing his journeys in melody. At night, he lay by the lake and watched dreams float on the surface like lanterns. But on the morning of the 4th day, the wind changed. The pull, a soft tug brushed across his chest. It wasn't physical, it was the string, the one no one could see. It had begun to tighten ever so slightly. His time here was ending. The girl from before, Liela, stood quietly beside him at the lake's edge. "You have to go," she signed, her fingers slower this time. "You're not done becoming." Izaghi didn't want to leave, but he understood. He touched his chest where the string pulled, nodded and whispered, "Just for a little while." He climbed into the air again. The foam claps flapped once, then twice. Whoosh, whoosh, and a storm of petals blew through the village square as he rose. Children danced, musicians waved. Liela smiled. Izaghi didn't cry, but the sky did, just a little drizzle, like a quiet goodbye. Chapter 3: The Forest of the Forgotten Friend. Where memories grow like trees, and not all roots are kind. Izaghi's journey carried him past the musical clouds of Valura, across fields that whispered, and rivers that never flowed in the same direction twice. But ahead something felt still. The air grew thicker. The skies turned gray, not from sadness, but from silence. Izaghi descended gently into a grove where the wind refused to hum. His device flapped once. Clap. Twice. Clap. But no breeze followed. The forest didn't allow it. Here every tree was twisted like an old scar. Their bark held faces, faint, almost forgotten. Whispers echoed with the hush of things once said and long lost. Izaghi had entered Silmare, the forest of forgotten friends. A voice in the fog. A small shadow darted between trees. Izaghi followed, unsure why. The wind tugged again at his chest, the string pulling gently backward, warning him to leave. But he moved forward. The shadow stopped beneath a large weeping tree, and there, standing barefoot in the moss, was a boy about Izaghi's age. He looked familiar. "You came back," the boy said. Izaghi froze. He didn't remember the boy, not his name, not his eyes, not the scar on his chin. I waited, the boy said again. You promised. Memories trickled like water into Izaghi's mind. He had imagined this boy once, years ago, a friend built from dreams, someone he played with before he ever invented his flying device. His name was Toma. But when Izaghi had begun to explore, Toma had stayed behind. The price of flight. Toma wasn't angry, just still. You left to see the world. I couldn't go. So I stayed. The forest remembered me, even when you didn't. Izaghi didn't speak. He didn't know what to say. He stepped closer. I'm sorry, Izaghi whispered. The trees sighed. Toma touched the invisible string on Izaghi's chest. His fingers didn't pass through. It was real to him. The string will always pull you back, he said, but not always to places. Sometimes to people. The wind stirred. For the first time in Silmer, leaves rustled. The trees hummed, not with music, but with forgiveness. Izaghi held out his hand. Toma smiled, shook his head, and stepped back into the mist. Go, Izaghi, don't forget again. And just like that, he was gone, rising again. Izaghi walked out of the forest in silence. When he reached the clearing, he looked back. The mist had closed behind him. The trees no longer bore faces, but one tree, tall and strong, had a single name carved into it, Toma. He touched the string across his chest. It no longer pulled backward. It had relaxed. It had forgiven. Izaghi took a deep breath. Clap, clap, and the wind returned. Chapter 4. The City Where Time Skipped. In a place where time refused to move forward, Izaghi learns the cost of standing still. The wind carried Izaghi high above canyons painted in reds and golds, over bridges made of vines and light. For the first time since he left Arukai, he felt something shift inside him. Not just wonder, but wait. The memory of Toma lingered like a shadow behind the clouds. And then, far below, he saw it. A massive clock tower with no hands. A city of stillness. He descended. Welcome to Alanmere. The streets were perfect. Too perfect. Children sat frozen mid-laugh. A baker stood with bread halfway in the oven. Pigeons hovered in the air without flapping. Even the wind stood still. Izaghi touched the ground. No echo, no breeze, no smell. Time here had stopped. He walked carefully through the city, past fountains that didn't ripple and curtains that didn't sway. The buildings shimmered faintly, as if caught between now and never. Then one sound, a single tick. Izaghi turned to see a girl in a cloak made of paper calendars. Her hair was silver, though she looked no older than him. You're not supposed to be here yet, she said. The keeper of lost moments. Her name was Lyra, and she guarded Olenmere, the city where moments too painful, too confusing, or too precious to let go came to live. People freeze themselves here, she explained, to hold on, to stop change. But why? Izaghi asked. Lyra sighed, then snapped her fingers. The air shimmered, revealing a memory. A mother clinging to her baby who was growing too fast. A boy frozen mid-apology, afraid his friend wouldn't forgive him. A girl caught in the best laugh of her life, terrified to let it pass. This city is full of hearts afraid to move on, Lyra whispered, and soon it will try to keep you too. Izaghi shivered. Already his feet felt heavier. Letting go. To leave Olenmere, Izaghi had to give up one perfect memory, something he wished could stay forever. He thought of Velura, the lake, the laughter, the music in the rain. He thought of Leela's silent goodbye. His eyes stung. "That moment," he said, "the drizzle when I left." Lyra nodded. She held out her hand. He gave it away. The weight left his feet. The city faded to gray. Lyra smiled, softly, not sadly. "Now someone else will find your memory, and maybe it will help them let go too." The sky beckons. As Izaghi rose into the sky again, he felt lighter. Not empty, free. The string on his chest shimmered, not pulling, not pushing, just glowing. Time hadn't waited, but neither had he. Chapter 5. The Island with No Name. Some places find you only when you're no longer looking. Izaghi drifted through the clouds, his eyes half closed, heart a little quieter than before. He had given away something precious in Olenmere, and though he felt lighter, the silence left a mark. He wasn't chasing anything now. No destination in mind. No village in sight. Just sky. That's when it appeared. A shadow on the horizon, floating, still. An island that had never been on any map. No name, no welcome, only mist, the arrival. Izaghi approached slowly. His device flapped softly. Clap, clap. But the winds obeyed the silence of the place. The island was small, just a hill, a single willow tree at its center, and water all around. But the moment Izaghi landed, something changed. The string on his chest relaxed completely. No tension, no pull. He was free. The place between wishes. Beneath the willow sat a woman with a blindfold made of leaves. Her skin shimmered faintly like moonlight on water. "Welcome, wanderer," she said. "This is the place before answers." Izaghi tilted his head. "Before answers?" "Yes," she said, "because you've stopped asking." She invited him to sit beneath the tree. Time passed, not fast or slow, just right. He didn't ask questions. She didn't offer truths. They listened, to wind, to stillness, to the unspoken. And then she said, "This is the only island you cannot return to. Not because you're forbidden, but because once you leave, you'll be ready to keep going." Izaghi felt something bloom in his chest. Not a memory, not a hope, a knowing that he was still becoming, the unspoken gift. As he stood to leave, the woman handed him a feather, not from a bird but made of light and string. "This is not a tool," she said. "It is a reminder." "Of what?" Izaghi asked. She smiled. "That even freedom carries weight, and even weight can help you rise. Departure without a goodbye." He stepped back onto his device. This time it didn't clap. It opened on its own, softly, gracefully, and the wind didn't push. It lifted. The island disappeared behind him as mist swallowed it whole. No name, no need, only what was left in his heart. Chapter 6. The Night Sky Market, where stars are traded for stories and truths shine brighter than the constellations. Izaghi rose through the dusk, the sky now tinted violet and gold. The world felt softer, like it was catching its breath between dreams. He had no direction, only the gentle lift of wind beneath him and the quiet flicker of something ahead. Tiny lights, floating, dancing, and then music. Not from instruments or voices, but from the stars themselves. He had arrived at the night sky market, a market above the clouds. It wasn't on the ground. The market hovered midair, lanterns strung between moonbeams, stalls built from meteor dust and driftwood. Vendors stood atop platforms made of constellations. Customers rode on comets, shadows, and light. Izaghi stepped onto a glowing thread and walked through the stalls. Each one offered something extraordinary: a jar of thunder stolen from a forgotten storm, a pocket mirror that reflected the future version of whoever looked in, a locket that, when opened, whispered the one story you never told anyone else. The reflection booth. Izaghi paused at one stall where a mirror floated in the air. The vendor, a woman with eyes like eclipses, nodded at him. "It's free," she said, "but you can only look once." He stepped forward, heart steady. In the mirror, he didn't see the 7-year-old boy. He saw a version of himself, older, a little taller, still kind-eyed. This Izaghi stood in a village surrounded by children. He wasn't flying. He wasn't running. He was teaching, sharing stories, helping others build wings. Izaghi's breath caught in his throat. A flicker of tears welled, not from sadness, but from recognition. That future was possible, maybe even true. A star for a story. At the center of the market was a wide circle of listeners, gathered around a glowing campfire that had no fuel, just flame made of memory. Izaghi was invited to sit. "Tell us a story," said a child with a crescent moon on her cheek, "and in return, take a star." Izaghi thought of Valura, of Toma, of Olenmir, of the island with no name. He told it all. His voice was small, but the stars leaned closer. The wind quieted to listen. Even the fire held its breath. When he finished, a single star floated down into his hands. It was warm, not hot, and pulsed gently like a heartbeat, leaving with light. As Izaghi flew upward again, the market shrank behind him, its lanterns folding into galaxies, its laughter becoming stardust. The star in his hand remained. He tied it to his hip alongside the feather and the string still glowing from his chest. He didn't know what came next. But now he didn't need to. He was collecting more than just places. He was becoming someone who understood why he'd left in the first place and why he'd someday return. Chapter 7. The Desert of Distant Echoes, where every voice is heard only when the heart is quiet enough to listen. Izaghi soared far beyond the edges of Arukai's green and glowing forests, past islands cloaked in mist, beyond places where even the stars dared not shine too brightly. Below him now stretched a pale, endless desert, soft dunes glowing silver under a quiet moon. He had never seen a desert before. It was beautiful and strangely silent. Until he heard a sound, but it came from behind him. His own voice whispering something he had said days ago. The land where sound lingers. The desert of distant echoes did not work like any other place in Arakai. Here, every word, every cry, every breath spoken into the wind remained. It did not vanish. It wandered. It lingered. And only when the wind decided, it came back. Izaghi stepped onto the sand. His feet sank gently. He didn't hear birds or wind. He heard, "I'll come back someday." It was his voice from Valura. Then later, "Don't be afraid to leave, even if it hurts." Leela's voice, then, "I wish I knew what I was looking for." His own voice again. But this time he didn't remember saying it. The echo shepherd. As he walked, he noticed footsteps in the sand. Some his, some not. That's when he saw her. A tall figure cloaked in cloth made from wind itself. Her eyes were hidden, but her ears glowed. She carried a long staff, and at the top was a bell that never rang. You've left echoes behind you, she said, not unkindly. Some true, some forgotten, all waiting. Izaghi asked, "Can you help me find the one I need to hear?" She knelt and placed her hand on the sand. The wind stilled. The dunes shimmered. Then from deep beneath the earth came a single echo, not loud, not fast, just real. You don't have to be brave all the time. It was his mother's voice, a whisper from Arukai, a voice he hadn't heard since he left. Izaghi fell to his knees. He had forgotten how much he missed it. Listening to the quiet, the echo shepherd gave him no more words, only space, space to cry, to smile, to remember. She offered him a pouch. Inside were empty jars. "Fill them," she said, "with the echoes you find. Carry them until they're needed." Izaghi took them, not to use, to share. The wind at his back. When he flew again, the winds in the desert didn't fight him. They carried him, as if thankful for being heard. The jars clinked softly at his side. And now Izaghi didn't just fly with his own voice. He flew with many. Chapter 8, The Sea That Sings the Future, where waves carry choices, and every decision leaves a ripple behind. The sky opened wide, and below Izaghi stretched an endless ocean, deep, dark, and shimmering with strange lights beneath the surface. His floating device dipped low, catching the salty air. The sea sang, not with words but with low melodic hums that pulsed in time with the waves. Each note seemed to carry a different meaning, a different possibility, as if the ocean itself whispered the futures that could be. Izaghi felt a shiver. His hands gripped the string at his chest. "This is not a place for the mind," he whispered. "It's for the heart." The tides of choice. As Izaghi floated lower, he saw shapes rising from the water, waves forming into doors, each shimmering with different images. In one, he saw himself as a grown man, standing tall in Arakai, surrounded by children listening to his stories. In another, he saw himself as an endless wanderer, never stopping, always seeking. In a third, he saw a version of himself who never left home at all, living quietly, safe, but small. The ocean called softly, "Choose." The dilemma. Izaghi's heart raced. "If I choose, will the others vanish?" he asked aloud. The ocean only sang. The string on his chest quivered, not pulling, not pushing, just waiting. Izaghi closed his eyes. He thought of the friends he'd met, Leila in Velura, Toma in the forest, the echo shepherd in the desert. He thought of his mother's voice. He thought of why he left, and he realized he didn't have to become only one version of himself. The sea wasn't asking him to pick a life. It was asking him to believe in the one he was already living. The answer in the wind. Izaghi opened his eyes, smiled, and whispered, "I choose the one that grows." The waves shimmered, and the doors dissolved into spray. The ocean's song rose, louder, brighter, joyful. A single pearl floated up from the water and settled into Izaghi's palm. It was warm. It glowed softly. Inside, he saw a swirl of colors, moments past, moments future, all waiting. He tied it to his belt, next to the jars of echoes and the feather from the nameless island. The journey continues. Izaghi rose into the sky once more. He didn't know where he was going next, but he knew this. He didn't have to know. The wind would carry him, and the strings would guide him, always. Chapter 9, The Mountain Where Dreams Sleep. Some dreams are too heavy to carry forever, but they can still be awakened. The wind led Izaghi beyond oceans and deserts, beyond places where even his heart had dared to dream. And then, on the horizon, he saw it. A mountain so tall its peak disappeared into clouds. Its sides were dark, etched with strange glowing patterns, lines like veins, pulsing slowly, as if the mountain itself were breathing. This was the mountain where dreams sleep. He felt the invisible string on his chest tighten, not pulling him back, but holding him steady, almost like it was whispering, "Be careful, some dreams are heavy." The Valley of Forgotten Wishes. At the mountain's base, Izaghi found a valley strewn with broken objects, a paper kite with a torn wing, a sketchbook filled with unfinished drawings, a flute with a cracked mouthpiece, a half-built model of a ship. He realized these were dreams people had once carried, but left behind. Each one hummed faintly, a song of longing and regret. Izaghi picked up the kite. The wind lifted it, but only for a moment, before it sagged back into the dirt. The climb. The higher Izaghi climbed, the heavier the air became. The string on his chest glowed, pulsing in time with the patterns on the rocks. His breath grew shallow. His device flapped weakly, the foam claps struggling against the thinning air. At a small ledge, he stopped. There sat an old woman, her hair long and tangled, her skin wrinkled like the folds of old maps. She spoke without opening her eyes. "Every dream you've ever had waits for you here. Some still want to grow. Others want to let go." Izaghi asked quietly, "How do I know which ones to keep?" She smiled and the mountain hummed. "You don't choose them. They choose you. The ones that stay are the ones that still sing." The dream that chose him. As Izaghi reached the summit, the wind howled like a song half remembered. The air shimmered. Before him, a single glowing stone hovered, a seed of light, pulsing with the same rhythm as the string on his chest. When he touched it, a vision bloomed in his mind. He saw himself older, teaching other children how to dream, not with inventions, not with magic, but with hope. The dream sang to him. It wasn't just his own dream, it was the world's dream for him. Izaghi took the seed. It pulsed warmly in his hand, a soft weight, like a promise waiting to grow. Down the mountain, into the wind. As Izaghi descended, the broken dreams in the valley whispered softly, "Thank you for remembering us." He didn't take them all, just the one that chose him. The wind carried him back into the sky, lighter, stronger, and no longer afraid of the dreams he'd leave behind. Chapter 10. The Storm That Whispers Names. When the wind itself knows your name, you must decide who you truly are. Izaghi had learned to listen to the wind, its songs, its sighs, its soft encouragements. But now as he floated into a wide, open sky, the wind changed. It didn't sing, it whispered. And the whispers were not just sounds, there were names. His name, other names. Names he didn't recognize, but somehow felt. The storm approaches. Ahead of him the sky darkened, not with night, but with a storm so vast it seemed stitched from shadows and sparks. It churned in a slow spiral, glowing faintly with blue lightning that cracked the clouds open. The whispers grew louder, carried on the wind, swirling around him like threads caught in a storm's breath. Izaghi, son, traveler, dreamer, lost one, the one who must return. Each name tugged at him differently, some like gentle hands, others like sharp thorns. The string on his chest vibrated wildly, pulled in all directions at once. The choice of names. At the heart of the storm, Izaghi found himself floating, weightless. The wind wrapped around him, not pushing, not lifting, but holding him in place. The whispers became a single voice, deep and resonant, like the echo of the world itself. "Who are you, Izaghi?" He opened his mouth, but no words came. Memories flashed through him, his father's hands rough and warm, the laughter in Valura, Toma's sad eyes, the bell of the echo shepherd, the jar of his mother's voice, the pearl from the sea, the seed from the mountain. Each one was a part of him, but they were not all of him, the answer in the storm. Izaghi reached into his pouch and held out the jars, the pearl, the seed. He let them go. The wind didn't take them. They floated, glowing softly. And then he said, clear and steady, "I am not one name. I am all of them." The storm paused. The wind held its breath. And then it whispered back, this time softly, gently. "You are the one who remembers." The calm after, the storm unraveled, threads of wind unwinding into soft breezes. The sky opened again, blue, golden, vast. The string on Izaghi's chest relaxed, no longer pulling or tugging, just there. Izaghi drifted quietly, his heart full, not of answers, but of acceptance. He had not lost himself. He had found that he was many things, and that was enough. Chapter 11. The Garden That Grows Without Seeds. Where kindness blooms not from what we plant, but from what we give. The wind carried Izaghi far from the storm, his body light, his heart fuller than it had ever been. He followed no compass, no map. He simply listened to the breeze, the string at his chest, the quiet song of the earth itself. And then he saw it, a small clearing in the clouds, a patch of land that floated gently above the world, almost as if it had grown from the sky itself. No gates, no walls, just a soft, glowing meadow where wildflowers swayed without stems and vines curled in midair without touching the ground. It was a garden that grows without seeds. The gentle caretaker. In the center of the garden, tending to invisible roots with her bare hands, was a woman. Her hair shimmered like petals, her skin like old parchment, and her eyes, kind, timeless, patient, watched Izaghi approach. "Welcome, little traveler," she said softly. "This is where what you give grows." Izaghi tilted his head. "But I didn't plant anything here." The woman smiled, her hands sinking into the air, lifting blossoms that seemed to bloom from nothing. "Ah, but you did. Every time you smiled at someone, every time you listened instead of spoke, every time you helped without asking for thanks, you left seeds in the world." She turned her palm, and a small glowing bud opened, a faint, warm pulse that felt like his laughter in Valura, like the moment he helped Toma remember joy. Planting without knowing. Izaghi knelt, watching the flowers bloom, some delicate, some strong, some still buds waiting for time to unfold them. And then he understood. The garden didn't belong to anyone. It grew from kindness, from love, from him. He pulled from his pouch the jars of echoes, the pearl from the sea, the feather, the seed from the mountain. Gently he placed them in the soil that wasn't really soil at all. The ground shimmered. Flowers opened, some in colors he'd never seen before. And as they bloomed, he felt the weight in his chest ease. The string wasn't pulling him. It was holding him steady. It was reminding him he could give and still go, leaving light behind. The woman pressed a small, glowing seed into Izaghi's hand. It pulsed softly, like a memory, like a promise. "Carry this," she whispered, "not to plant it, but to remember that you already have." Izaghi rose, his device flapping gently at his sides, the wind lifting him once more. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. The garden would keep growing, even after he was gone. Chapter 12. The Star That Waits for No One. Some lights shine not for those who chase them, but for those who are ready to receive them. Izaghi soared higher than he had ever dared before, where the air grew thin and the stars seemed so close he could reach out and touch them. His string shimmered softly against the dark sky, pulsing in time with the stars. And then he saw it, one star, brighter than all the rest. It pulsed like a heartbeat. It flickered like a memory. It called to him, not with words, but with a quiet ache that tugged at his chest and whispered, "Come." The star that refused to wait. As Izaghi approached, the star seemed to move, not away from him, but not toward him either. It shimmered in and out of focus, just beyond reach, as if it wanted to be caught but refused to stop for anyone. He tried to speed up. Clap, clap. The foam wings fluttered faster. The engine hummed louder. The wind roared beneath him. But no matter how fast he flew, the star stayed distant, shining, waiting, and not waiting at all. Izaghi shouted into the wind, "Why won't you let me reach you?" The wind carried no answer, only the soft sound of his own breath. The moment he stopped chasing, exhausted, Izaghi slowed. His arms ached. His device flapped slower. He hovered, breathing hard, the string at his chest quivering. He stared at the star. And then something changed. It wasn't the star that moved. It was him. The star had always been there. It wasn't meant to be caught. It was meant to be seen and felt and trusted. Izaghi let his hands fall. He stopped chasing. And the star, it pulsed once, brighter than ever, and fell into his heart. Not like a burden, like a memory waiting to be kept. The journey continues. The wind shifted beneath him, soft and steady. The string on his chest glowed warm, no longer pulling, no longer tugging, just there, quiet and sure. Izaghi looked down at the world below, the places he'd been, the faces he'd met. He smiled. "I'll see you again," he whispered to the star. And the star whispered back, not with words, but with the quiet knowing, "You already have." The end. You have been listening to Izaghi and the Strings of the Wind, written by Wesley Nascimento. Read for you by Brian Campbell. Thank you for joining Izaghi on his journey across the skies, the towns of wind and shadow, music and memory. Thank you for holding the string with him, the one that pulls us home, even as we drift toward our dreams. This story was a celebration of wonder, of courage, and of knowing that no matter how far we float, we are never truly alone. This audiobook is copyright 2025 by Wesley Nascimento. All rights reserved. Thank you for listening.